Guys, so in today's video what we're going to do is we're going to talk about a wrist move. Now this wrist move is used by all professional golfers, but it's really very pronounced with Jon Rahm. Jon Rahm has a very pronounced wrist hinge. I'm going to show you exactly how to do it and exactly the reasons why you need to start practicing it. Let's get stuck into it. Backswing. What needs to happen in the backswing position is two things. We need an element of wrist hinge, which is this action here, because it keeps the golf club on plane. So you can see if I take away the wrist hinge action, can you see how more vertical the club shaft becomes? The more I hinge the back of the wrist, the more it helps the club stay on plane. Now, there's also another thing, this kind of secret thing that most golfers don't realize, is what your wrist is also needs to be doing in the backswing position is it needs to help you in like a pushing action to keep your lead arm straight. Now, what you're looking for is a good indication is when I swing back here, my trail palm, so my right palm is pushing my left thumb to help me keep the arm straight. This is a really, really good thing that you need to be doing. By feeling that my right palm pushes my left arm straight, and in the downswing, which we'll talk about, it helps me get the club into this position. See, what happens that you don't realize is loads of golfers that reach out for help, they sort of swing back and the hands get too close to the body. So then when you start the downswing, your hands end up too high. And then from here, obviously, you can't strike the golf ball. You don't quite realize that the feeling is that your arms almost need to be much straighter in the golf swing itself. So, first of all, how you introduce that is up to you. Okay, now there are different versions. If we're looking at somebody like Jon Rahm as an example, he's somebody who, as soon as he starts taking the club back, he starts to have very pronounced wrist hinge. So this means his hands and arms go a little bit more out in front of him, similar to somebody like Dustin Johnson has a very similar motion, like so. Now that might work for you. You might like the feeling of hinging the back of that wrist early and then holding it as you get up towards the top of the backswing. I'm fine with that. That may work for 50% of you. Some of you might not like that. You might prefer a traditional one-piece takeaway where you move the club to the side of you. And then from here, then you can work on the wrist hinge motion. Doesn't matter. What's key is that when you get to the top of the backswing, you want to really feel like your palm is pushing away from you, and you almost want to feel like it's facing the wall or the space to the side of you. If you can do that, that means you're getting the club into a really good position at the top of the backswing, which is screaming out now for a good downswing. Things that we're trying to do in the downswing to be able to hold onto this wrist position. So when we hit the ball, we want to kind of make sure that the wrist is still holding onto an element of hinge. Now, for most golfers, it doesn't. So they end up hitting it more this way. So there's two things that you want to do. The first one is I already sort of alluded to it. You want to kind of make sure as you start the downswing position here, can you see the way that I make sure that I keep this arm structure as it is? So I feel like my palm is consistently pushing down, 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 down. So by the time I get to when the club's parallel, it feels like my right palm is pushing down in towards the floor. That's a really good feeling to go from the wall down to the floor from here. However, you could have really good arm move, but you also need to have a decent amount of rotation. Now, the reason why you need good rotation is because for me to be able to hold on at the point of impact with an element of wrist hinge, it basically means that my right shoulder needs to be lower to the floor. If my right shoulder is up here, then it doesn't matter how hard I try to hold on to wrist hinge, I can't get the club on the ball, which is why if lots of you can't help doing this scooping action, that's the reason why. It doesn't. You could try and hold onto this wrist position until you're blue in the face. It isn't going to hold there unless you are turning. As I turn, so I get my chest, my sternum, my lower body to face towards the target, you can see the way that it brings my right shoulder down to the ground. As my right shoulder comes down to the ground, this now gives me the ability to hold onto that wrist position, and then I can release it on the way through, which I'm less concerned about. I'm not too concerned about the wrist position on the way through. So what we see with Rahm, what we see with DJ, what we see with all pros is we see an element of hinge, and then when they hit the ball, a retention of hinge. And the way you're going to get that is by first of all making sure in the backswing you get the club into a really good position, and then you want to get this balance of, as you start the downswing, keep that palm pushing down to the floor as you turn through the ball, and that is going to give you that capability to keep that wrist hinge all the way throughout the golf swing, which will make a massive difference. Let me know how you get on. I'll speak to you guys again really soon.